Are your finances actually resistant to censorship? And if so, well, how much? There's this concept in cryptocurrency and blockchain tech called censorship resistance. You hear that a whole lot. It's kind of confused with decentralization sometimes, but essentially censorship resistance means it's difficult, if not impossible, or very close to impossible for whatever you do to be censored by some kind of outside party. Because we're initially talking about financial censorship and not speech censorship, basically it means no one can take your money from you, no one can stop you from using it. That's kind of what it means. And a lot of blockchain technology is a little bit difficult or maybe even inefficient compared to a lot of more centralized systems of doing things. But the entire reason why we even have this stuff is because we want to be able to resist censorship. That's like the number one reason why everyone goes out of their way to build this entire incredible industry, is to enable things that just wouldn't be enabled if you had to basically get someone's permission to do anything. Of course, there's a lot of other cool stuff going on, but that's the number one reason. I mean, no one was like, wow, I love this Bitcoin stuff. It works so well. I can't wait to put it in a centralized payment processor that gets to transfer it around. Like, no, the entire reason behind it is that people could not mess with it. They could not change it, block it, inflate its supply, all this kind of stuff. So that's the entire reason you're probably even watching this video, is because you care about this concept of censorship resistance. Why does it really matter, though, that you use something that's censorship resistant? I mean, if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to hide? Well, there's a whole lot of cases where you'd really want something that's not liable to be censored. And essentially, anytime you run afoul of the powers that be, whatever it is, for whatever reason, even differences of opinion, past social media posts, whatever the reason, it could be used against you in the future. Of course, with the winds of change being as they are, whoever ends up being in power could really change, and their attitudes could really change. And it's not just, say, governmental power, but it's institutional power, even, tech monopolies or whatever. And even if they don't shift around, their enemies might, and you could be collateral damage in that. And remember, the most important thing to you is, of course, your body, your personhood, your personal safety. If someone goes and hurts you personally, that's kind of it. But number two, of course, is finances/resources, because what happens if you have control over your whole body? You're fine, but you just don't have any money, or your money gets taken from you, or your resources, you can't make any. If you are completely shut off like that, then you end up being in a really bad spot, possibly starving to death, who knows? But that's a very serious thing that can happen, and that's, of course, one of the first things that people go to when they want to shut you down. Anytime a group or individual falls out of favor with the powers that be, financial censorship is one of the first things to happen. We've seen this happen recently with right-leaning voices, particularly preceding and following the latest US election. Whether or not you agree with them, you should be concerned that this kind of financial censorship can happen to you too. It's not just dissidents that get censored. The perfectly legal cannabis industry has struggled with banking since its inception, and the blockchain space has faced similar issues as well. Crypto personality Tiffany Hayden famously became involuntarily unbanked due to a personal relationship issue, which I covered in a Cointelegraph article years ago. So is your life really that resistant to financial censorship? Well, let's find out. First, we have to define what financial censorship really is, and in my view, there's four main ways you could be censored financially. The first one is, of course, the most obvious. It's theft or expropriation, however you want to call it. Basically, someone takes your stuff. Literally, you have it, they take it, it's gone. Of course, this is easy to conceptualize when you're thinking, oh, I have a stash of gold coins or a big stack of money under the mattress or whatever it is, that someone gets into your house and then takes it from you and wow, it's all gone. But the more common version of this is, of course, in the digital age, is digital removal. Like you have a bunch of money in the bank and whoop, it's gone one day because someone said it's time to take it. So obviously hackers and thieves and things like that are an actual issue, but here we're talking about the bank itself taking it from you, the government causing that to happen, etc. If you have your money or the majority of your resources in something that someone can just decide, you know what, I don't like the guy, I'm going to take it all from him. You're not very censorship resistant now, are you? Cyprus famously stole money from its citizens, and even countries such as Canada have floated similar ideas. Of recent infamy is a US gym owner who defied lockdown orders only to have his money stolen from his account. The second way you could be censored is from transaction blocking, meaning you want to make a transaction, you want to send or move your money around, and that isn't possible. So let's just say you have a whole bunch of gold in your house, okay, and no one knows where it is, they can't take it from you, so you're immune to the first form of financial censorship, but now the second hits you, where what can you do with it? How can you actually spend it? Well, you need to go take it to an institution or something, and then they will give you permission to spend it elsewhere. They'll give you credit, you get a card, whatever it is, but you can't really do it without it. That's transaction censorship. Or, maybe you have all your money in an account that doesn't block you, but whatever app or processor you use just won't let you send it. That's what we're talking about. And then you can have all the money in the world and who cares as long as you can't actually use it. Remember, feasibility matters here too. If you can't move your money without exorbitant fees or waiting many hours or days, then even if you don't literally need a centralized third party, practically you do. Third kind is payment blocking. Now, it's very similar to transaction blocking, except with one key difference, right? With transaction blocking, you can't move your money. No one will process it for you. You can't actually get it sent anywhere. It's just stuck in one spot. Payment blocking is a little different in where you can send it anywhere you want, any account you got here, there, anywhere, to any person, but you try to actually spend it at some sort of a merchant in some sort of an exchange, and you can't for whatever reason. They won't let it. They refuse. Oh, we don't accept from those addresses, from those accounts. Oh, we're going to block all payments originating from this. It's basically the same thing, but the hair split is very necessary because there's a lot of cases where you could use a decentralized network like a cryptocurrency, send it all over the place, and it's fine, but for whatever reason, you can't end up spending it. And then you have money, you can send it to people, but then you're going to have to sort of work out some kind of a deal where someone else buys things for you because you can't spend them yourselves. And then it's like a practical restriction on your spending ability, not just a literal one. A great example of this is social media app Parler being shut out of using Amazon web hosting. It's not that they couldn't send their money, it's that where they wanted to spend it didn't want to do business with them. And number 4, which is a little sneakier, is value theft / inflation. So let's just say you have a ton of money, no one's going to take it from you, no restrictions to how you can send it around, no restrictions to who will accept it for payment, but the government decides, or the issuer decides, they're going to print a whole bunch more of this, or remove parts of the supply, or whatever they do that makes what you have worth less. Even though they're not taking those units from you, even though you still have that little stash, they're taking the actual value purchasing power, messing with that. So you can have a completely censorship resistant financial system, but if the supply is able to be tampered with, it doesn't really matter, because then you just work as hard as you want, get this as much as you want. If someone doesn't like you or the majority of holders or whatever, they can just start inflating the money, and then all of a sudden, hey, you're kind of out of luck. Even the US dollar, considered one of the best and biggest fiat currencies, has lost a significant portion of its value over the years. Others haven't fared as well. This works out the same as direct theft, only in a more roundabout and gradual way. So let's go down the checklist. Generally speaking, we're talking about cryptocurrencies here because of all the problems with other currencies, whether it's government currencies that are liable to be inflated, or whether it's precious metals, which just are not something that people spend these days. They're so limited in terms of how you can use them in commerce today without a centralized third party, etc. So let's just talk about crypto. You want something that has inflation control, that has a fixed emission schedule, right? As in, you know how frequently the money is going to be kicked out. Because even in the case of a higher inflation project, you want to be able to know exactly how much value this is going to store. Of course, you'd want something with almost no inflation, very low inflation, so it keeps its value a whole lot better. But even if it's not super optimal, you just want to have something that's fixed so that it can't be changed later on. It can't be manipulated. And this one's a lot trickier, a decentralized supply. You want it to where a lot of different people hold the supply. It's not like a couple actors just have a whole bunch of it, because that's kind of the same thing as having an inflation rate that's open to reinterpretation, right? They can change, because let's just say a couple whales have a giant chunk of the supply and they decide, you know what, we're going to price manipulate, we're going to crash the whole price, and they make big buys and sells and things, and they manipulate the value, and that has the practical effect of devaluing the currency, even though it's not being inflated by whale games and stuff, by the supply being controlled by a centralized entity or too few players. That can be a big problem. Bitcoin is thought to have established the gold standard for this, with a fixed ultimate supply and decreasing inflation, as well as a decentralized distribution mechanism spread out over many years. Some coins, like Ripple and Nano, have everything created at the beginning, with no guarantees it'll ever be distributed well. Any project that's centralized around a single person or group could, of course, be modified to change the supply. And the second thing you want, of course, is you want to control your own private keys. Of course, there's a bunch of ways to do this, but basically, you want to keep your money in a wallet that has one of those 12-word recovery phrases. Obviously, there's other backup forms, but that's like the big newbie-friendly standard right now. And basically, you want to have complete control over your money to where whatever app you're using it in can't actually take it from you, right? The people that run the app don't actually hold custody of those funds. It's you with your private keys that you have on your device. And probably the only way to really know this for sure is if the wallet is open source, meaning the code is publicly verifiable by anyone. Now, you don't have to be a coder yourself. You don't have to actually know how to interpret it, although of course that makes you have a little extra peace of mind. But just the fact that it's there and anyone can see it, you can see if there's any kind of weird backdoors there. It says that you control your money, but they actually have a way of siphoning it away from you. If it's open source, that's not going to be a problem. And of course, it helps to have like a backup second option in your mind that you can use in case something happens to the first one. So let's just say your favorite wallet gets, say, taken down from the app store, or they get compromised, they do something happens like that. Sure, you didn't lose your money. You still have it backed up. You can put it anywhere else, but like if you don't have a second option kind of on deck ready, then it's going to be a hardship for you. You should know another service that works where you can just plug it in and then you can still send and receive and it works fine. Of course, whatever light wallet client you use is going to rely on some kind of an external full node to broadcast your transactions everywhere. And if you don't like that, or if you start to run out of options with that, at some point you might just have to run your own node, either to point the light wallet to or just to do all transactions. So basically with that, you go straight to the source and build the open source client that runs everything, and then you communicate with the rest of the network, and then you get to send stuff directly, and then you get to use up all your hard drive space on syncing the whole blockchain. Unless you're a hobbyist on this stuff, it's probably not worth doing this, but if you start to not be comfortable with the various light wallet client solutions out there, this might be the only thing for you to do. And finally, and probably more rarely, you want a place you can spend this anonymously. Keyword being anonymously, because let's say you have control over all your finances. Let's just say you can send and receive them anywhere. You got your wallets, you got a full node, you got everything set up. But what can you actually do with it? Of course, you can go spend it someplace, but what if every place wants some sort of a KYC? What if some place wants to know, oh, I want your ID, I want some identifying info, I want to prove where the funds came from. And that's starting to happen at an increasing rate with a lot of payment processors, is they're starting to want to know where the money came from and other identifying info. And of course, that's a censorship angle. If they don't like you, then they identify you, and then you can't spend it at those places. It's too bad. So basically, you want to know ahead of time, where can I spend this if everything really goes off? What kind of businesses do I know that just don't care who you are, they'll just give you the product if you give them the money, and then that's just fine. Keep a nice list of that, including some off-the-books friends who do goods and services you could trade with, and then no one has to know about. And that's how you know you can really be censorship resistant. Bitrefill, for which I always leave a link in my videos and podcasts, is pretty great for this. Also look up How to Live on Crypto on Odysee and YouTube, and you'll see lots of examples on how to spend it, many of which may be done without ID requirements. So that wraps it up. Have you ever experienced financial censorship? I hope you haven't, but if you have, I would love to have you volunteer your comments down below or wherever else. Tag me on social media, whatever. Send me a little transaction with a little message. However it works out, let me know, because I'd like to know some more real world examples that aren't just, oh, I heard a headline in the news, some friend of a friend of a friend this, but it's just like, oh yeah, this happened to me. I got blocked from this. So let me know, and I will see you guys next time.